We're here to talk today about the new kinds of experience design that we're able to do with AI and machine learning. Sentient design is what we call the form and the framework and the philosophy of designing intelligent interfaces, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But first, some introductions. I'm Josh Clark. I've been doing UX design and product design for the last 30 years. I've been leading design agency Big Medium for 25. I've written a lot of books about UX and product design for O'Reilly, for A Book Apart, for Rosenfeld Media. So I've always kind of thought, it's like, all right, I've got a handle on this UX and product design stuff. What are the best practices, right? It's like, all right, I've got some confidence. This has been my career. But as I've been working with AI and machine intelligence for the last several years, I've realized that a lot of these hard-won assumptions need to be revisited. And that's where this one comes in.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronika. I'm a designer and researcher with Josh at Big Medium. And I'm an elder Gen Z, so my whole life has kind of been mobile and internet native. You know, static web interfaces have always been a part of my life, as they are now a part of all of our lives. The kind of algorithmic TikTok-like experience is native to me. But also my career is AI native. I started at Big Medium about 6-7 months after ChatGPT hit us all and changed our experience as we know it. So my whole time at Big Medium, I've kind of been exploring this explosion of AI, and my professional work has really focused on the design applications in this interface.
So Veronika doesn't have as much experience as I do, but also she's not burdened by as much experience as I am. And so what you're looking at here, too, is 2 generations of designers, and literally 2 generations. Veronika is not only my colleague, she's my daughter. I'm very proud of you, sweetheart. And so very happy to be up here, but it's also been a really productive work collaboration. Because as I said, it's like this thing that there's this moment where old heads like this one need some new perspective and need to sort of have some folks like Veronika to ask questions like, wait, why are we doing that? Does that still apply? AI is weird. It's a really strange design material. It lets us do things that we couldn't do before, but also introduces new problems that we haven't had before. You know, like hitting the back button when you don't mean to, that kind of stuff. All right. So we do need new perspective and takes on this stuff. So at last, what does it mean for us to have new kinds of user experience and product design with AI? How does this change things? That's what we're here to talk about today, and we're going to talk about that in 5 chapters. So Veronika, to you.
Okay, great. All right, everybody, chapter 1. Are you ready? What the hell? Guys, what's going on? What's up with AI? How do we use it? What are we supposed to do with it? What do we make of it? What does it all mean? What are we doing here? We're getting so many conflicting messages about how to use it. In fact, each of us are getting conflicting messages about it every week, every day, every hour. It feels like it's wildly confusing.
I mean, like one moment I'll be like, it is so smart. I can't believe it can mimic any kind of image style. It's coding apps for me on the fly.
Right. And then next we're asking questions like, why can't it count the number of R's in the word raspberry? Or why is it telling me to put glue on my pizza?
But on the other hand, it's so big, it's going to change everything, right? AGI, artificial general intelligence, it's right around the corner.
Right, so we're used to all the big promises, but realistically, I'm using it to write emails and LinkedIn posts.
It's going to change everything. It's going to make science revolutionize.
Sure, or it will ruin everything. It's going to ruin humanity as we know it, and it will write all of our poetry while we're relegated to washing the dishes.
So, as we're trying to figure out what to do about this, what else could we do but to turn to the greatest philosopher of our time?
It's blowing my mind because I watched movies on this as a kid years ago when I used to see this shit, and I'm like, what is going on? Then I heard the old dude that created AI talking about, this is not safe because the AI's got their own minds and these motherfuckers gonna start doing their own shit. I'm like, is we in a fucking movie right now or what? The fuck, man? So do I need to invest in the AI so I can have one with me or, like, do y'all know? Shit, what the fuck?
Even Snoop doesn't know. Like, even Snoop, what are we supposed to do here?
It doesn't help that we live in a very kind of polarized society, right? That this definitely touches the conversation about AI as well, where everything is either amazing, the biggest thing since fire, or it's terrible and it's useless. With AI, as in most things, the truth, right, is probably somewhere in the middle, in this sort of hazy, fluid, gray space of both good and bad. But when you look at all the good, I mean, sincerely look at all this stuff, these sort of superpowers that we have now as designers and developers with AI, it really is truly breathtaking.
Right, and then you look at all of the risks, all of the mitigations, and these are in no particular order here, and they're very real. They're a really big deal. I want to harp on this point for a moment because we truly believe that large language models are the purest distillation of extractive capitalism to date. And that's not a small deal at all. They have sucked up all of the world's content without any credit to the creators, and it requires punishingly vast amounts of energy to use. And these are not small things. This will have knock-on societal and economic effects for generations, issues that we haven't even begun to think about or consider yet. So as we move through all of these things, like, make no mistake, this is fraught, and we're telling you how to use it, we're telling you how we think it should get done, but it's not a slam dunk positive for society. But that's not new either. Technology gives, technology takes, and it really is a back and forth.
I mean, ultimately, it's like, how do we use this stuff? So, I think that it makes a lot of sense for some of you are probably skeptical, maybe fearful, uncertain about AI. That is so logical, just based on that last slide that we were looking at. But there's also so much opportunity. How shall we use AI and put this to use in our work? Many of the problems in that last slide are not inherent to the technology. It doesn't have to be an energy suck. Look at DeepSeek, right? It doesn't have to be expensive. Business models don't have to exploit content creators. But do no harm is also sort of a low bar, right? So like what we're going to explore today in the context of all of those very real concerns is what can we do in our sphere as product designers, interaction designers, user experience designers, what can we do to create dramatically new, better, and more valuable experiences? I think, though, it's like an interesting thing. Like, I don't think that as an industry we're yet doing that. Like, I think that we're still doing something at kind of a different level. At Big Medium, we talk to a lot of digital leaders over time, and Veronika, you do a ton of research around this stuff. What are you seeing in terms of what how people are approaching AI and digital organizations?
Right, so unsurprisingly, the obsession is really with efficiency. And I apologize, this slide in the past week or two has really taken on a very Doge-ish tone, so sorry about that. But as I'm saying, preoccupation with efficiency, more efficiency, right? How can we see higher ROI? How can we drive down costs? Just overall that same obsession that we've always seen from corporations. And we've especially seen these efficiency efforts focused on things like software development, marketing in the form of image generation, and human resources. And all of these are very tool-focused applications. How can AI change processes and workflows? And the same has been true for designers as well. It's how does AI affect our ideation process in the initial stages.
So it's like we're focusing on process, how we make, and not what we make.
Correct, yeah.
So that feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity.
Right, and even to the degree that designers are using, building AI into their workflow, it is very tools focused and it is very transactional. We're seeing features bolted on that are generating text or editing images. You're throwing in a text field to edit content, those types of things. And it is a very engineering perspective of AI. The focus is definitely on changing the process and not on the resulting experience or product.
I love that point that it's sort of an engineering-focused thing. And that's a natural moment for kind of new technologies like this. What does it do? Rather than sort of experientially, how do we level that up? So a lot of the stuff right now we're seeing is very sort of transactional. experience design, as Veronika mentioned. But friends, there is so much untapped design opportunity right now, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about today. We want to share some ideas about how designers can think about AI, not just what we can make with it, the generative AI part, but what kinds of experiences can we enable. So I mentioned before, we're going to do this in 5 parts, 5 chapters to this talk. We've already done a little bit about what the hell. We're going to go into a new design material. How do we think about this, not as a tool, but as something that you can weave into interfaces to make an intelligent experience. Those kinds of things are radically adaptive experiences, things that can really sort of be extremely fluid based on user need and intent. The role that we have will change as we start to allow some of these experiences to be mediated by AI and for the user and AI to work together directly. Where does that leave us? We'll talk about that. And then finally, some new ways to think about generative AI in that last chapter. So let's get after it. Let's talk about a new design material. Instead of thinking about AI as a tool, as I mentioned, we want to challenge you to think of it as a design material. What does great design look like when you weave intelligence into the very sort of fabric of the interface? And speaking of great design, yeah, right? Beautiful. All right, okay. So this is this little sketch I made of a little interface. Oh, friends, there we go. All right. So I drew it in an app called TL Draw. It's like a whiteboard app or a platform for building whiteboard applications, things like Miro or FigJam. And TL Draw added a feature called Make Real. It's a feature that turns your sketches into working code. So I select what I drew here, and I click Make Real. And then after a few seconds, it actually sort of builds the interface. And this is more than just sort of like drawing it or building the UI widgets. When I click in here and I start interacting with it, it's actually inferred from my sketch what the thing should do and how it should behave. So I've just sketched a little miniature application here to actually, do its thing. Let's look at another one. So here we have a sketch of a notebook on the left. The sketch has some instructions to make a page flippable notebook. And so Make Real has generated this prototype on the right. Let's try it. Yeah, very pretty. All right, one more of these. Draw a keyboard here on the left with a few instructions, and Make Real creates a working keyboard on the right. It even adds sound. All right, so that's pretty cute. Kind of mind-bending, but it's actually an example of one of the many sort of functional design patterns that we've identified in Sentient Design. Veronika?
I absolutely lost my mind when it added sound. I thought that was so cool. But Josh is right. We call this pattern the Pinocchio design pattern. You're turning the puppet into a real boy, if you get it. It's pretty good, thank you. So you're taking a sketch and you're turning it into a working prototype. You're taking a prompt and turning it into a full essay. You could take the opening riff of a song and turn it into the whole thing. Basically, you're taking an idea and a concept and you're turning it into a working reality. And this is really machine intelligence acting as a collaborator, turning low fidelity into high fidelity. So we have an example here. This is a plugin we made at our agency, Big Medium. So on the left here, there's this wireframe that I drew, and we're going to run the plugin. We're going to click, and ta-da, ta-da. There's a layout created by the plugin that uses the design components from our client's design system. So you're able to select and launch, and bam. It's not a finished design by any means. I think we can all agree on that. But it takes a wireframe, gathers the components, and sets the table for the designer to kind of finish the meal. And it all happens in the context of your working environment, which is the part here that I really like. Here it's happening in Figma. But staying in the environment, you're maintaining the context and allowing for the most cohesive experience possible.
There's not sort of a separate mode, right, of sort of like a chat experience off to the side. You're continuing to work in context there. So a similar example of that, coming back to my little sketch in TL Draw, is this is a whiteboard app. So I've decided to add my edits by sort of putting this text and arrows and marking it up, like I would in a whiteboard. When I select it all and then click Make Real, it sort of generates another version based on my notes, and you can see here, oh, roundedness has been changed to roundness, and the scale under the hood for size has changed from 20 at the left to 200 on the right, and it's a red triangle. So it's this whole sort of thing of like a subtle but important interaction decision, which is like, we're not going to create new modes for this. We're going to think about how to put intelligence into the interface itself so that you can continue to use this same interaction mode. So you just sort of sketch away, mark it up, keep going. I want to be clear about some of these examples, because what we're doing here is generating some code under the hood and generating some design. That's not the point of these. In fact, I feel really strongly, and I know, Veronika, you do too, that the kind of a component assembly or code generation that we're seeing here is not doing the real work of designers or developers. So much of design is embedded in that original wireframe that Veronika had sketched in that earlier example. Not the high-fidelity object. Great design is in the what and the why, in the sense-making. So what kind of new what and why does machine intelligence unlock? And this is what sentient design is about. This is that question. What happens when you weave intelligence into digital interfaces? Instead of thinking of AI as a tool, think of it as a material, as we said. So these sort of handful of examples that we've seen so far allows us to reimagine the interaction surface as an intelligent canvas. When you weave that Pinocchio pattern, or any machine intelligence, into the fabric of an application, its interface becomes a radically adaptive experience, a radically adaptive surface, right? That can become something new. It can change its behavior, its content, its structure, sometimes all three at once. And that's a far cry from our traditional static interfaces. It's so much more than chat, which is, I think, sort of what we tend to think of as an intelligent interface at the moment, right? Now, this is only one direction, this idea of intelligent canvas for imagining new machine intelligent experiences. We'll talk about more, but the intelligent canvas is a powerful example. And like the Pinocchio pattern, this experience pattern of intelligent canvas is one of many in sentient design. And again, we'll explore a few more of those. But let me just show you some mainstream consumer examples of this intelligent canvas idea. iPad app. The calculator app that came out last fall has a feature called Math Notes that lets you essentially draw equations and make them interactive. So here at the bottom left, if I turn that into an equation by making y equals, now I can add a chart to this. Say, great, that's charting what that is. Those scribbles up at the top, though, those are actually variables. So if I tap the 30, I can change that, and you can see the graph is changing. So what this is doing is like, it's like you can just draw this interface to sort of make it do what you want to do, and it works. The point of all this is that you're making the application canvas itself intelligent. It's like telling it what kind of application that you want it to be as you do it. This is just spreadsheet functionality, right? But we've gotten rid of the grid and let the user draw whatever they want, including images on it. So this is something that is sort of like on-demand software, or at least on-demand interface. Draw an app to adjust recipe portions, or to calculate your calorie usage in your workout. Just draw what you need. Maybe it's disposable software then, right? Great, I need this, done, got it, move on. Just draw it and go. So these are examples where the system adapts to you instead of the reverse. It's interaction on human terms instead of machine terms. We have interfaces now that can discern context and intent and just do the right thing. Sometimes explicitly, like the iPad example, sometimes implicitly, where it's just sort of discerning what you want to do. So as we saw, this sort of begins to approach on-demand applications. Claude is pretty amazing about this. I'm sure some of you have played with this. In chat, you can tell it to make an app and start using it and improving it right away. So here I told it to build an asteroids game that I could play in the browser. And in seconds, I was playing it during the chat and then asking it to make changes. So I told it to add scoring and sound effects. And then I typed in add zombies. I didn't even know what that would do. I had nothing in mind, but it added these like green asteroids that started chasing me around. So it's this kind of thing that basically created this on-demand thing that didn't exist a few minutes ago and was just now tailored to me.
Right. I also love Claude, and while Josh is going around playing his little Gen X games, I'm trying to do some work. So I asked Claude to make me a little accessibility contrast checker between two colors. And on its own, it decided to go ahead and write out this whole application for the task. I didn't ask for it, but because that's what it needed to complete the task, that's what it built. So it's on demand, in the moment, and then entirely disposable. It didn't even use it in the final answer.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and this is, we're kind of used to this discovery through search process when we're looking for answers. We're using search like Google, or we're using curation like social media. But I mean, oh my God, look at what's happening, right? You're able to totally manifest the experience you want. And this is really new to interaction design. And it's crazy, and it's exciting and full of opportunity. But I want to be careful when we say manifest, because manifest can sound a little bit like we're saying making. But today we're talking about more than just like what machine intelligence can make.
Right. So the point of these last few minutes that we're really trying to do, and just to underline it here, is that machine intelligence is our new design material. All of these examples weave intelligence into the canvas of the interface itself. So the interface becomes not just responsive, but radically adaptable. It can manifest as something new, as Veronika was saying. So just like HTML and CSS are design materials, or dense prose or data is a design material, it wants to be used in a certain way. So as we think about and explore what we can do as designers with AI and machine intelligence, we want to find out not only what it can do, but how it wants to be used and how it doesn't want to be used.
Right, the grain of the material. Yeah, so this all adds up to something called sentient design, which really describes the form of this new experience. It's the form, but it's also the framework and philosophy for working with intelligence as a design material. And as our interfaces become more aware, designers must also be mindful of the opportunities and risks, and that's what sentient design is.
And if I can actually just interrupt, friends, we are having a book that's coming out here later this year from Rosenfeld Media, and it's going to be sort of all about all these things. We've got these little sort of postcards here with some information about the book. Feel free to come up and grab one of those later, including some information that you can get to keep up to date with sentient design while you're waiting for it to arrive at your favorite bookseller. Sorry to interrupt, Veronika.
No, all good. So sentient design, we're talking about intelligent interfaces that are aware of their context and intent. They're radically adaptive to user needs. They're collaborative. They're multimodal. They can go from text to speech to images. They're continuous and ambient. They're there when you need them. They're gone when you don't. They're deferential. They're there to suggest rather than impose. What's not included in this list, you'll see, not explicitly, is making stuff. Because while making images or generating text can be a mean or a form of sentient design, that's really not what it's about.
Right. So this brings us to our third of 5 chapters in this talk, which is radically adaptive experiences. And this, this is one of the characteristics that Veronika just mentioned, but this is kind of core to what we're talking about here. Chatbots of large language models are an example of this, right? That you can ask them anything, totally open-ended, and it will respond, and you can follow a completely meandering, one-of-a-kind experience that is radically adaptive to you, that could not have been anticipated by any designer before in terms of the content path that it's following. What sentient design asks is what happens if we take that same open-endedness, that same radical adaptability, and bring it to any interface. So these are interfaces that then are conceived and compiled in real time based on the context and intent of the user. So what does this look like? And also, how do we avoid turning this thing into some kind of crazy robot fever dream where it just kind of goes all over the place? How do we put some guardrails around this so it has some coherent shape? Here's an example from the Google Gemini team. Gemini, of course, Google's AI chat experience. And while this demo starts in traditional chat, it does something exciting. We call this experience pattern bespoke UI.
Let's say I'm looking for inspirations for a birthday party theme for my daughter. Gemini says, I can help you with that. Could you tell me what she's interested in? So I say, sure, she loves animals, and we're thinking about doing something outdoors. At this point, instead of responding in text, Gemini goes and creates a bespoke interface to help me explore ideas.
It actually changed the interaction mode, right? From just like a text chat to a GUI with an interface pattern suited to the specific context and the exploration that's been proposed in the chat. If we look under the hood at what's going on here, this is the structured data that's passing between the system to the UI layer, right? And what we can see here is that it's saying that there's some ambiguity, that we don't know what kind of animals the daughter likes, and we don't know what kind of party that they want to have. But we've got enough information to ask. And so it's like, all right, well, let's proceed then. And then when we see actually a little bit more in here, it's like, all right, well, here's the content that we want to explore. What are the party themes and activities and food options? But this part is really interesting. Here in this layout, we see this data type list detail layout. There's a design component to use. This is using a design system. So this has got like this little constrained design system with some rules around context for when to use each. So it's got some structure, just like we do this with humans with design systems. Here's the stuff. Here's sort of the scope of things to use for specific solutions for specific problems. Let's see how this story continues.
Farm animals. She would like that. Clicking on the interface regenerates the data to be rendered by the code it wrote. Ooh, I know she likes cupcakes. I can now click on anything in the interface and ask it for more information. I could say, step-by-step instructions on how to bake this. And it starts to generate a new UI. This time, it designs an UI best suited for giving me step-by-step instructions.
All right, so that thing that he did with the word cupcake, like interact with any element on the interface and zoom into a new direction. Again, sort of something that's like a path that couldn't specifically be designed for, and so has this complete open-endedness, and then sort of follows and creates a new UI based on what you select and what you ask there. So it's not a path that you can design for specifically, but it's enabled by making machine intelligence the mediator of this. So the opportunity, yeah, please.
In other words, we can use machine intelligence for experience, not only functionality. We're really able to use LLMs to understand intent. We can collect and synthesize information. We can select the right UI, and then we can deliver it. You can take this out of the chat experience for a moment and really ask yourself, what does this mean for data dashboards? How could we populate a specific area or corner of the interfaces with just-in-time experiences suited to the specific need of the moment? Yeah, and this is an example from Salesforce Generative Canvas. It's a plugin for Salesforce that assembles dashboards and content based on context. So here we're using a calendar. And it's using familiar design patterns from the Salesforce design system. It's pulling from the usual Salesforce data sources. It's just assembling them on the fly. So design system best practices become really more important than ever. We're giving the intelligent interface the design system to use for its own expression.
And so you can see how it's like, all right, so we can embed intelligence into traditional GUI interfaces and have them make some decisions for us. That's kind of what those previous two examples were about. Sort of get a little bit weirder with another example. This is a little exploration that we created called Sentient Scenes. So you give it a scene, like the submarine descends, and then it acts it out. A little square starts to be like, all right, I'm the hero in this scene. You can give it another prompt, like HAL 9000 from 2001, A Space Odyssey, and it's going to act that out too. It changes its form. This is a radically adaptive interface. It changes style and mood and behavior based on user intent. There's even a kind of personality that's implicit in the square's motion and the way that it acts out the scene. So here, if we want to see, what happens when a wizard's spell goes terribly wrong, we kind of get this frantic vibe and these sort of wizardy colors and font. We'll look at how this works in just a second. But this is just a little toy, but some of the implications are quite big. It explores some provocative themes here of intelligent interfaces beyond chat, where it's sort of like the interface itself, instead of talking about this scene, it becomes the scene. It's got some personality and presence without pretending to be human. It's got this awareness of context and intent. Beyond just the description, it's getting mood and sensibility that's sort of implicit in what I'm asking for in describing these scenes. And again, this open-endedness that is part of radically adaptive experiences, but within constraints. All of the scenes feel similar. They follow similar rules, but can be completely divergent, an infinite number of possibilities in the scenes that it generates. So this is kind of like chat. I'm talking to the system, but the reply is coming to the UI engine instead, right? It's like, so I'm giving the system an instruction, and the system is giving the interface an instruction for how to present that. So it's actually pretty simple. Those instructions are straightforward. Update the CSS values for background and foreground color, update the text caption and the font family, and then add a CSS animation and glow that's sort of in tune with the mood of the scene. So it's really just these things of being like, give me some new CSS and a text caption, and I'll plug it in here. So it's like the machinery itself is pretty simpler. This brings us to chapter 4 of like, how do we build this stuff? So chapter 4 of 5, friends, you're making excellent time. So let's talk about how this works in practice and how your role changes when you create things like this. We'll talk a little bit about how we developed this little sentient scenes exploration. We started by just asking in chat informal prompts like this to see what kinds of responses we'd get. So we'd ask OpenAI questions like this. And then, as we started to get sort of a sense of how it would respond to that, we started to add a little bit more in terms of asking it to respond in a more structured way, starting with something simple like Markdown. So we would start to get responses like this, where it's like telling me what the colors it would suggest, the caption, really kind of creepy blood emoji. Creepy, there's some darkness to OpenAI, friends. So there we go. Sort of keep an eye on this. So as we kept refining the prompt, this is how the final prompt begins. You are a scene generation assistant that creates animated stories. Your output defines a scene by controlling a character, a square div, that moves based on the user's description. The character always starts at the center of the viewport. You will provide the colors, font, animation, and text description to match the story's topic and mood. For movement, we gave it some high-level creative direction for how to apply animation to different moods for things like action scenes or peaceful scenes or suspenseful scenes, sleepy things. So we started to sort of say, think about as you identify what the mood of the description is, think about how that translates to motion like this. And we did similar things with font choices. And then we gave it some specific instructions for how to format the response. So the final response, this is how it's always formatted when it comes back. I am chatting with the OpenAI chat API, but its response always comes back with using these colors for background and foreground. Here is the CSS to apply for the shadow or glow effect. Here's the caption text, the font family, and so on. And it just inserts the things into there. So really, it's like, again, the machinery of this interface is pretty simple. We taught it how to do things just by chatting with the interface and refining our prompt. So crafting these prompts was the central design activity. More than sketching UI, we sketched prompts, guidance to the system for how to behave. So as we create these open-ended, AI-mediated experiences, our work becomes a little bit more meta. We're no longer doing each sort of specific interaction, but we're defining sort of the rules and the physics for this tiny little universe. We are becoming the creative directors for this. We define the parameters for the possibilities, and then we step back so that the system and the user can collaborate in this very tightly defined sandbox that we've created.
Okay, so the prompt does kind of triple duty, bridging all of the things. We're technical, we're creative, we're a product director. It used to be that programming app behavior was the exclusive realm of developers, and that's not true anymore. I mean, designers and product folks can come in and get their hands on the action. They can do this just by describing how they want the app to work. The prompt becomes a hybrid artifact to kind of run the whole show. So it's part design doc, part documentation, part programming language. And it's also technically very easy. You're just like talking to a prompt.
I mean, how much time did it take us to make this?
Like not even a day. It was so fast.
Yeah. I mean, so it's the thing that we're talking about here is that it's just sort of plain language requirements documentation and creative direction that we're giving to some of these things that help the system to understand and approach the problem. So it's not just a technical challenge. It's more of a challenge of imagination. And part of that imagination is how to talk to these systems in ways that go beyond sort of simple conversation, right? So just as an example of how to sort of think about the kind of the fluidity or the different ways that we can ask these systems to communicate with us in order to speak UI. Here's a little example. So I'm talking to ChatGPT here, and I'm going to start by asking it to respond to me only in French. So one of the things, right, is that these things are very fluid in their language. So it's bien sûr, we're going to speak in French now. And I don't know, let's actually tell it to respond to me only in JSON. So it gives me a JSON object with a property réponse and value bien sûr. And so it's like, all right, well, so now let's ask for some information. What are the top 3 museums in Paris? And it's going to give me a JSON object of musée items with an array of all the museums and the descriptions there. So all right, well, I don't know, let's just flex a little bit and see if it can do it in Spanish. It's changed up, right? And now it's sort of giving me this result, the same response in Spanish. So I'm looking at museo instead of musée. Now I want to, it's like, all right, well, let's see if it can sort of speak UI. I want to display this list as a carousel of cards on a website, provide the properties to provide to this carousel object. It's still in JSON, right? So it's structured data. And now it's sort of saying, here's a carousel object with an array of items, and each one has the same description that we were looking at before. It's even included an image URL. And wait a second, it's even suggesting some interaction rules to include in the carousel here in terms of autoplay. Well, I don't know. Let's just ask for the interface at this point. So it's going to give me the HTML, and it's generating it here. You can see it's got sort of some style sheets in there and some CSS styles embedded. And here's the content that we were seeing before. It's the museum content and description with those placeholder images in there. And we actually sort of see now the jobs. Like, I guess OpenAI is a little old school, jQuery, so, you know, whatever. But let's see if it gets the job done. Chuck it into the browser. And all that I did here was replace those placeholder images with real images, and we've got this real carousel. So the point, though, again, is not that LLM can generate working code.
Right, that's a little bit old hat at the moment and a little scary anyway. The point here is really that LLM is an amazing chameleon. Content can be translated and transformed into whatever form or tone or context you need in that moment. They have internalized symbols of language, of visuals and code, and they can summarize, remix, and translate that content for you. Sometimes they can even turn those remixes into answers, but really they're manipulating symbols for concepts and associations between those symbols. They can summarize concepts, but they don't seem to have any real understanding of them. Sorry, they don't actually have any real understanding of them. That's important. So how do we navigate this new relative strengths and weaknesses? And that brings us to chapter 5, the new face of your interface. If generative AI can be so nimble in manner and format, we can think about generative AI in a new way. That is your face. Speaking of faces, hello. Did you all see this movie, Catch Me If You Can? Anyone remember it? So Leonardo DiCaprio plays a con man and kind of a master impersonator and criminal. He can kind of get into any role or situation he wants. He's a doctor, he's an airline pilot, I think he's a lawyer as well, because he has this manner and he has this way about him, but he doesn't actually have any knowledge.
What?
Are you my dad head to Miami?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm your deadhead. Here you go.
You're a little late, but the jump seat is open.
You know, it's been a while since I've done this. Which one's the jump seat again?
Oh, Leo. Oh, my God. So he's able to do all this talking, and now he can really communicate in a way that has convinced this airline worker that he should be able to get on a plane for free.
You turning around on the red eye?
I'm jumping puddles for the next few months, trying to earn my keep running leapfrogs for the weak and weary.
Look at him go! Look at that! He has absolutely no idea what he's talking about, but he knows how to carry it, so he's convincing everyone around him. He has that command of jargon, context, and tone, but he still doesn't know how to fly the plane. And this is what LLMs do. This is exactly what they do. They talk the talk, but they don't understand the meaning. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't have any real-world knowledge. When you say something like, give me the answer, what it hears is, give me something that looks like the answer. That's what it's really doing. It's just putting together words in a way that seems statistically most likely. The miracle here, and it's amazing, it feels magical, is that oftentimes it's genuinely correct. It often gives you the genuine correct answer. But if they're only right 90% of the time, what about the 10% of the time? What are we supposed to do with that? Worse, when they're becoming more convincing, how do we know when they're right and when they're not? This is a problem, especially if you're working in a high-stakes situation, like healthcare, airline safety, financial regulation, or even just, I don't know, Josh, drawing a picture of ramen.
Right.
ChatGPT, show me a bowl of ramen.
Here's the illustration of a...
Get rid of the chopsticks. Bruh.
Here's the revised...
Now there's 3 chopsticks!
I apologize for the...
Now there's 4!
Let's generate the...
I still see them.
Here's the revised...
Do you see those 2 long brown things?
I'm unable to visually...
Show me what a pair of chopsticks looks like.
Here is the illustration of a...
I don't want to see these 2 things with my bowl of ramen!
Here's the new...
What are those 2 stick-looking things on the right side of the...
I can't visually inspect the images.
What do you mean you can't see the picture? You drew it!
Right. So it's a lot of yelling, but I think we've all shared that frustration. It literally cannot conceive of ramen without chopsticks, but it actually doesn't even know what ramen is or what chopsticks are. It doesn't have any relationship to them. It's just a mathematical concept of ramen that is so close to the mathematical concept of chopsticks that it can't even separate the 2 of them. And AI and machine learning don't deal in facts, right? They deal in probabilities. There's no black and white. It's only about a world of gray. And what this means is that they're delivering signals, not hard truth. We need to adapt that we need to adapt that understanding in order to make our presentation of these more effective.
Yeah. I mean, so large language models are not answer machines. They are dream machines. So this is a feature, not a bug. This is how they were really sort of designed and embedded. They were designed to imagine what could happen next from any premise, any sort of seed text in the case of large language models. So as designers, though, we often present those signals as facts. We don't show that sort of nuance or texture of these things being signals instead of facts. Instead, I think one of the things that we can do is start to think about how do we start to caveat or sort of change the presentation of these things to match the fact that these are probabilities, not absolutes. Maybe these things are going to get better at answers. Maybe they will hallucinate less. Also, maybe not. So a really interesting line of design query is, how can we make their weirdness an asset instead of a liability?
Right.
Putting a lot of effort into fighting their essential kind of the way that they've built this idea that they aren't good at facts and answers. How can we start to do that? So in the meantime, what do we do?
Let's just not let LLMs fly the plane. How about that?
Yeah, I think that's right.
So here's what we suggest. We suggest using the LLM as kind of the face of your system. They're remarkably good interfacers. They can understand and express language in many forms. They're a very friendly host that can welcome you and understand your intent and reply in a way that feels natural. But for specific, especially technical data, they need to talk to other smarter, more grounded systems to get the actual facts. But in the meantime, they can present content in really varied ways.
I mean, and that is really what we're talking about when we talk about AI-mediated experiences. That large language models can understand intent and presentation, and they let us be kind of nimble and expansive in the kinds of presentations that we can create. So what happens now if we've got these systems that can actually translate into different forms and interaction models in ways that maybe we might like to do, but we don't have the time and resources to do it? They can even transform that content into from something static into something a lot more interesting.
Should we talk about PDFs? Speaking of interesting, right?
Yeah.
There's so much content trapped in PDFs, very static, no interaction, frozen, almost like a content prison, to be a little bit dramatic. And LLMs can really help here. Machine intelligence can kind of liberate this frozen content from their chains. I have a hunch many of you have used NotebookLM, which is Google AI's powered research tool. So we gave it a PDF of the Sentient Design book manuscript, and in a little under 3 minutes, it generated this 12-minute podcast-style conversation about our book.
Ready to dive into some really cool stuff? We're going to be talking about sentient design today.
Sentient design, yeah. It's pretty wild, right? Like, instead of us trying to figure out how computers think, they're starting to think more like us.
Seriously, it's like this whole new way of looking at how we use technology. So we've got excerpts from a book called Sentient Design by Josh Clark and Veronika Kindred.
Yeah, good book.
Plus,
Good book, Veronika. It's a really good book. You heard it here first, everyone. Anyway, we've got a book. We've got some postcards up here, too. It's just like all right, yeah, thank you. Well, that's bonkers, right? I mean, the script, the voices, all of it is AI. Now you've even got a thing where you can go in and ask it questions, ask those two sort of podcast interviews questions. Quality is remarkable. The tone is sort of just right for exactly this style of kind of conversation, American-style podcasting. But that's not the most interesting thing about it. I mean, I think that you've always made some really good points about this, that it's not about AI replacing human podcasts.
Right, absolutely not at all. By transforming the content from one form to another, you're taking PDFs to podcasts, you're enabling a whole new use case. There's a whole new experience for the content, and it can be any content. So it's, like Josh said, not that it will replace podcasts. What's really cool here is that it's enabling a podcast for an audience of one, right? It's a podcast that never would have existed unless you wanted it to exist. So instead of 100 pages of PDF to wade through, which requires your eyes, a lot of your time and attention, you've got a very casual, relatable conversation that you can listen to on the car, on the go, in your car, whenever you don't have hands-free. It's just for you in a specific moment when you need it. And what becomes possible when you liberate this content? What happens when it becomes really easy to do that? This is one of the superpowers of generative AI. So not the generation specifically, but how it can understand meaning in one context and change it quickly to another, whether that's another language, another medium, another data format. It understands concepts and can transform them into different shapes. It's a really cool question to think about. You know, what does that enable for the interfaces that you create and the content and data that you work with? One thing that we urge you all to do is to focus on the experience, not the artifact. And that's really the exciting bit that generative AI enables for interaction designers. It's less about the output and more on the outcome. You know, what is the user trying to do, and how do we enable that in the most graceful way possible? What kinds of new experiences does the machine intelligence let us enable?
Yeah. I mean, so what does, for example, explicit collaboration look like with AI? Figma and its generation of software introduced the multiplayer experience, right, of sort of collaboration tools where we're all working within the same environment to make comments, to contribute work, ask questions. Now we can add sentient design assistants to the mix too. So suddenly we have multiplayer mode where we're interacting not just with human colleagues, but AI assistants and agents. So we call this experience pattern the NPC pattern, a gaming term, right? Non-player characters. It's a player that's run by the system instead of a person on the other side of the screen. So we're familiar with some of this stuff already. This is like what Slack bots are doing in your Slack channel. We're sort of familiar with that as sort of like, we understand that they're not human, but they are behaving through the channel of us so that we're interacting with them in context. Miro has a feature called sidekicks. They do things like give feedback on your content or suggest new content. So it's kind of like classic generative AI, really. We could be doing this just in a chat box to say, give me feedback on these things or create new suggestions. But instead, Miro does it with an experience where the system acts as a user. So here the NPC is called product leader, and it behaves in the context of the system, how a user would behave. So how does it provide feedback? It goes through and it just adds comments, right? How does it add new content? It adds new sticky notes. So similar example, here's another one, a Chrome extension called Pointer that works in Google Docs. So I've asked it to review my document for technical accuracy, and then it goes in and it makes suggestions, just like a human editor would. So I don't have to go to some separate chat interface. It behaves as an NPC, a non-player character, within the rules of the application. So here you see the edits that it made. It does this as my account. I think that's a limitation of the sort of Chrome extension and how it has to work with Google Docs. Extra points, right, if it was clear that this was a bot sort of doing this stuff instead. But as an experience pattern, it's really solid. So friends, intelligent interfaces are so much more than chat boxes and text fields. Under the hood, as we were seeing before, that kind of conversation is what enables these things, but we don't have to make it literal dialogue to make this stuff go. Typing prompts is not the UX of the future. We don't have to dial the clock back decades to command line interaction, right? It's experientially different and better to bring it directly into the interface context where you work. And that's what we mean by weaving intelligence into the interface, into the experience, instead of bolting it on or forcing a switch to a different mode. So what we want to really encourage you all to do here is be really expansive in exploring what are the different shapes of intelligent interaction that this could look like. We've seen sort of a few new ones. We've also seen what happens when you sprinkle a little intelligence onto existing interfaces to sort of make proactive choices for the user here. So what are all of the sort of the different possibilities that are emerging? Well, friends, get ready. So this builds upon some great work from Matt Webb of interconnected.org, a terrific thinker about some of this stuff. And it's a triangle that sort of charts different types of machine intelligent experiences across sort of three different criteria. One is how grounded are they? Traditional computing experiences, grounded in fact and rules, really reliable. The same input will give you the same output. Interoperable, works across systems or across languages or across formats. So data scrapers live here, but also things that can talk to other systems like agents. We'll talk about that in a second. And then at the bottom, radically adaptive, which is really the new thing. These sort of two elements have been part of computing for forever. The radically adaptive part is what happens when you start to add some intelligence here. And what you get here are these four different postures. And what we mean by postures is the way that these intelligent systems can relate to the user. So with tools, very sort of traditional transactional computing interfaces. Here's an input, here's an output. right? Very controlled, very explicit. With chat, this tends to be a turn-based interaction with a peer, not necessarily dialogue, kind of like what we were seeing with sentient scenes. It can still be sort of something that I'm still sort of talking to it in some way and it's responding. Again, not necessarily in dialogue, but that sort of turn-based peer behavior. Agents, if tools and chat are behaviors that I need to manage, I'm delegating to agents. This is the thing where they decide what to do, go off and do it, decide when they're done, and come back. I don't have to sort of supervise it when all goes well, that it just kind of comes back to me with the response. And finally, co-pilots, which stake out the center and have elements of all of these things at once. So they tend to be continuous and present, available to be asked questions, like a chat experience, to do actions for you, like a tool, or to go off and do things for you on your behalf while you do something else, like agents. So sort of a combination of all of them, where they're mostly, their sort of defining characteristic is that they are kind of continuous and ambient. When you zoom into a lower altitude and really see here, we've got sort of 14 different experience patterns that we've identified so far. This list is not complete. It's also impossible to kind of show the full depth of these experiences on a two-dimensional chart. But this is like a really good thinking tool to sort of explore what happens when we do some things. We've talked about a few of these already, the bespoke UI, NPCs, intelligent canvas. If you're interested in finding out more of these, you don't have to wait for the book. You can also just put into Google the shape of sentient design, and an article will kind of come up sort of giving you an overview of the sentient triangle. This is a great use for a text box.
Right, so I think when you walk away from this talk today, you'll get the point that we've really just been trying to hound home, and that is this isn't about AI, not really. It's not how do we use AI, or the market needs to have some more AI products or features, how do we get them in there? AI and machine learning are only software, and they're a new material to us. They're enablers. Because, friends, this is really just software. It's not magic. It's a new technology to add to your toolkit. You learn the grain of this new material, and you can pull back from all this kind of magical thinking and ask yourself, what are these tools good at? What are they bad at? What new problems can we solve? What friction can we help users overcome through contextual awareness and radical adaptivity? And perhaps the most important, can we justify the cost of using these tools?
Yeah. So, I think the job of UX, after all, is to find these problems worth solving, right?
That's correct, yeah. So we started this talk by asking Snoop what to do with AI.
Like, do y'all know? Shit, what the fuck?
And I think the point here is that you guys do know. You've got the knowledge and the skills and the experience to be able to use all these tools. It's just that now you have a new design material to do them with.
So, this is sort of at the base, still sort of fundamental UX practice. What is the problem to solve? What are the tools available to meet those problems and solve them in valuable ways? We're doing a lot of this work at Big Medium right now. Veronika and I are writing the book about it. I don't know if we mentioned that. We're helping companies understand how to put machine intelligence to meaningful use. We're thinking about it strategically, doing some great product design as well. We're doing workshops about sentient design, and we're doing sentient design sprints with our clients, really doing kind of a full press on exploring what are the possibilities of this? What does it look like? It is an exciting and weird time. And I think that, we're sort of all in on this, but still realizing how much there is to learn and explore. Here's one thing that I do know, is that if we don't, the people in this room, if we don't decide what this technology is for, it will decide for us. So it's up to us, not the technology, to figure out the right way to use it, and to do that with thought and with intention, so that the technology doesn't decide for us, that the future should not be self-driving, which means, friends, that you are needed more than ever. If any of you have steered clear of AI, if you've been skeptical of it, maybe fearful of it, uncertain, that makes so much sense. but it's also all the more reason for you to engage with it. The technology is being shaped right now, and so is its application. So this is the moment to insert your values into this and help to steer this in the right direction as the agencies, as the industry finds its footing. So what values will you bring to this project? Bring your best selves to this next chapter. We have this astonishing new design material that can really elevate our craft and add really powerful new value to our products for our customers and for in our case, our clients. You have the tools available right now in your practice today to make something amazing. So we want to invite you to please go do that, friends. Go make something amazing. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We'd love to add you to our professional network if you're interested.
That's right, yeah. And if you enjoyed this talk, please give a kind review in the South by app. If you didn't enjoy it, let's never speak of it again. But in any case, I don't know if we mentioned we've got these little information about our upcoming book up here. We don't have time for questions, but we are around. Please come say hello. We'll also be out in the hall after we get kicked out.